If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists and the white media hate that. Now, that said, oh, what a difference a few days makes. Why, on Monday of this week, the corrupt Attorney General of Kentucky, Daniel Cameron, was telling everybody that he was not at all opposed to the grand juror who wanted to speak and to tell everybody all the illegality that was going on. Why, on Monday, Daniel Cameron was telling everyone that he didn't object to the juror's request to be able to speak freely about Daniel Cameron's illegal maneuverings and trying to derail the grand jury. That's what Daniel Cameron was saying on Monday. But what a difference a day makes. Now that the heat's getting turned up and it's time for the judge to hear motions on the matter, Daniel Cameron's singing a brand new tune today. Now he says, Your Honor, you can't allow the juror to speak. Why, it would overturn 200 years of prosecutorial misconduct. Of the necessary secrecy that the prosecutor's process needs. You see, the reason that the grand jury happens to be a secret process is because this is how you subvert the course of justice, but you get to do it without the prosecutor having to take any political or legal risks. The prosecutor gets to say to the grand jury, you've all sworn secrecy and it doesn't matter what happened here. No matter what illegal maneuvering I did, you can't speak about it. This way, whenever you got some rich white person or you got some white supremacists, some thugs with a badge that the prosecutor doesn't want to have to put on trial, he can bury it at the trial. He can bury it at the grand jury. And then he gets to turn around and say, well, you can't blame me. Why? We presented the case to the grand jury and the grand jury said that they just couldn't indict. It was the grand jury. But as I've been telling you for years, as we saw with the case of Daniel Pentaleo and as we saw with the case of Darren Wilson, these grand juries, they have these secret proceedings where the prosecutor tells the grand jury, don't prosecute. Or in the case of Daniel Cameron, that bastard sits there and tells the grand jury, I'm not putting indictment on the table. That's not going to be one of the charges. That ain't going to be one of the options. We're not doing it. And then he turns around and says, it was the grand jury's decision. This is what the grand jury is for. It is a shield. It is a means for corrupt prosecutors to be able to throw cases before they even go to trial and try to make sure that they use the grand jury as a scapegoat. Yeah, but that's breaking down, and that's the real threat here. The threat here is not just one particular case. It's a matter of this is the necessary secrecy that white supremacy requires. It needs to have these undercover secret proceedings where they get to do their dirt in secret so that they don't have to take a hit for it. You can't have the administrators of white supremacy actually being punished for doing white supremacy's bidding. But now Daniel Cameron's having to come out and nobody is pointing out, hey, wasn't this guy singing a different tune just a few days ago? Certainly not the Washington Post. Because they understand that they work for the same masters as Daniel Cameron does. But just to give you a case study in the corruption of the white media and how they understand that this happens to be a watershed event. The fact that this has even occurred, that it's even gotten this far. The system of white supremacy is beginning to break down now that people are focusing on it. Now that the black media is helping keep people's eye on the ball and making sure that this stuff doesn't just fade away. Just because the white media stops talking about it doesn't mean we're going to. And the white media is trying to figure out how do we change the subject, and we're not letting them do it. For example, the Washington Post, just a few days ago, they were posting stories about Breonna Taylor and totally leaving out all the facts, leaving out the illegal warrant obtained through perjury, They were leaving out any mention of the ballistics report. They weren't saying anything about that. The Washington Post and these other legacy white media publications and organizations, they were not pointing out any of that stuff. Instead, it was still the same old, well, Kenneth Walker, he shot the cops, because Daniel Cameron, this honest DA who would never lie, he said so. And the grand jury, they were trying to do the Jeffrey Toobin thing. Because they're neck deep in it too. The white media is just as corrupt and racist as these prosecutors are. Well, what happened was I went on Twitter and I decided to drop a couple of tweets to the Washington Post writers who put up this drivel, challenging them on what they were saying and pointing out they need to correct their stories. And in all future stories, you need to include the facts. And apparently a few others of you in the B1 Brigade, hopefully more in the future, but at least a few of you in the B1 Brigade went ahead and let them know, hey, we see you. And as a result, we see, at least in the case of the Washington Post, because there were some others that I also decided to put the arm on and let them know, we see what you're doing and you're lying, you're burying the lead, you're covering for the murderers by concealing the facts. So the Washington Post is trying to do some CYA about face. And in their story, I'm going to show you the difference between what they wrote, because they're putting up a sanitized version, because they know that if they're by indicting Daniel Cameron, they're also indicting themselves, and everyone's going to be pointing out, wait a minute, all this information you're bringing us, this is several months old. Why are you just now bringing it to us? So the Washington Post is trying to kind of give a spin to it that, oh, well, the reason we're reporting on it now is because the Louisville PD put out their report. So now we can go ahead and repeat this stuff that's been talked about for the last 6 months. Now, as they reported in the Washington Post, they pointed out that the Louisville Courier-Journal and television station WDRB, that they were repeating the reporting from these two outlets. And you'll notice that I and a few others, but mostly myself, I've been putting this stuff out there for weeks now, banging the drum about this. In fact, on Twitter, this is what I posted that I sent links to those Washington Post reporters to let them know, hey, since you guys apparently are too busy to do your jobs, here's some links that you can go to from some other people who actually did attempt to do some journalism, since the Washington Post doesn't do journalism anymore. Oh, how things have changed since Woodward and Bernstein retired. But finally, they are reluctantly putting out the facts, so they buried them in the middle of the story. They didn't lead with this. They buried it in the middle of the story, because to them, they figured this is going to be the end of it. Okay, those black people online, they got us. They caught us out. They're calling us out. So we'll bury it in the middle of the story, and this will be the last time we mention this. Oh, don't bet on that. But finally, they're talking about Joshua James and everything that we told you about, the lies that he told about how he verified that Jamarcus Glover was getting suspicious packages at Breonna Taylor's address. There was some U.S. postal inspector, except there wasn't one. Everything that I had told you about, now you got the Washington Post finally, after all these months, finally, after we called them out, finally reporting on it. Reporting on how the Shively police had told the thugs in the LMPD that there were no boxes there. How James decided that he was going to contact at least one of the Shively police officers who had told them that there were no packages being sent. And tell the guy, was there any mail for Jamarcus Glover that was going to Breonna Taylor's address? This after the murder. Now, according to Timothy Sawyer, he was the Shively police officer who Joshua James was bugging the most. He said that he found the fact that James was contacting him after the shooting odd, asking about were there any package, any mail at all, anything, even a postcard from Jamarcus Glover that was going to Breonna Taylor's apartment. Anything. Well, Timothy Sawyer said that was odd. I told you guys about this a couple of weeks back. This ain't news. Well, it's news to the Washington Post. Now, the way the Washington Post told it, apparently Detective Sawyer said that it looked like they, talking about the LMPD, were trying to cover their tracks. That's the way that the Washington Post reported that. But just to show you that they're trying to sanitize this. They're trying to whitewash it. I'm going to show you what it is that WDRB actually reported, just to give you the difference between what the establishment legacy white media reports and then what actually comes from the news sources themselves. Yesterday, WDRB, who has truly been doing the yeoman's work, they've been doing for the most part good work when it comes to these stories, though certainly not completely accurate. They reported that, of course, Joshua James is found to have lied in the Louisville Public Integrity Unit's report. So they use the word misleading as the word the police use, misleading. No, when you sit there and say that a postal inspector tipped you off when you never even spoke to one, you're getting your information not even secondhand, but third hand. And the person that you had as your go-between, they told you that the postal inspector said that there were no suspicious packages. When you turn around and decide, well, I'm going to say that there were suspicious packages anyway, and I'm going to write this under threat of perjury. When you perjure yourself, that's not misleading. That is a lie. But what happened is Timothy Sawyer from the Shively Police Department was interviewed by the Louisville PD, as I told you about. About a month after the murder of Breonna Taylor, Detective Joshua James decided to keep pestering Sergeant Sawyer, telling him, hey, I know that you said that the postal inspectors told you that there were no suspicious packages that were going to Breonna Taylor's address, but did you find out about anything else? Maybe a priority mail envelope, or maybe a postcard, something, anything from Jamarcus Glover, anything at all that was going there. And what happened was Sergeant Sawyer said that he was confused as to why James was contacting him a month after the shooting. And according to Sawyer, and you'll forgive my language, but I'm putting it the way that he did, he said that he talked to James and he told him, it looks like you're trying to cover your ass, is what it appears to me. That's what Sergeant Sawyer told the Louisville police investigators in an audio of the interview. See, he didn't say, it looks like you're trying to cover your tracks. He said, it looks like you're trying to cover your ass. But you see, that's not the tone that the Washington Post wanted to get across. They wanted to make it get across as if, oh, there was some sort of collegiality going on here. Now, you can tell from the way that Sergeant Sawyer was giving his interview, this guy understood that what was going on here, he could easily have been roped into this. The fact that he decided that he was going to be a go-between for another police department, man, it's real easy for him to become the fall guy. And he was making it very clear, I ain't going to be the fall guy for this. He shouldn't have been a go-between in the first place. He should have told them, hey guys, if you guys are on such poor terms with the local post office that you can't even deal with them because they've refused to deal with you, that sounds like a personal problem. Maybe you need to contact the DA or something like that, but you don't need to be getting us to do it. Don't be reaching out to another police department. This isn't our case. We are not the ones who created the bad blood between you and the post office. You need to deal with that. Leave us out of it. No, what happened was the blue wall. And Sergeant Sawyer's finding out that blue wall was looking an awful lot like a blue tomb. And here he is trying to dig his way out of it. And he wasn't alone, by the way. There was also another police officer with the Shively Police Department, one named Kuzma, and he said that he called Jonathan Mattingly, one of the three murderers of Breonna Taylor, and he asked Mattingly why the affidavit had said that the Postal Service had confirmed that Glover was receiving packages at Taylor's apartment when he, talking about Kuzma, had told Mattingly that he never said that to him. Because the only place that they had any information about the postal inspectors came from those two Shively police officers. And you had one of them who was reaching out to Mattingly telling him, wait a minute here. I just got through reading that affidavit that you guys wrote, and it says that you had confirmation from a postal inspector. Why did you say that? You know I told you that they never said that. They told you there was no confirmation. They said there was nothing there. So you got those guys from the Shively Police Department clearly understanding that they could easily be set up, and they were making it clear, nah, you ain't putting this on us. Now, this is a bombshell here. I mean, for God's sake, this is like something out of a movie, a bad one. You have a perjured affidavit coming from some dirty cops. You have a ballistics report that says you cannot prove that the person that you tried to falsely prosecute took any shots at anyone. You got a judge who refuses to hold these guys in contempt. You got a prosecutor who tries to get the heat off the police by falsely and fraudulently prosecuting an innocent man, Kenneth Walker. You got a state attorney general who lied to the grand jury. Daniel Cameron's representatives during the grand jury, they lied and said that the police were in the process of executing a valid warrant. Those are their exact words. They called it a valid warrant. The warrant was obtained based on perjury, based on a lie. Not because I say so, but because Joshua James himself said so. The Washington Post reluctantly, because we had to drag them kicking and screaming, they reported what we had told you about. James had told the Louisville police investigators that Mattingly had reported back to him that Glover was getting packages sent to Taylor's apartment, but nothing that postal inspectors deemed suspicious. Now, of course, we all know that was bull crap, the part about getting packages. But the point was, Joshua James himself admitted, yeah, Mattingly told me that the postal inspectors had said that there was nothing suspicious going on. So the guy who applied for the fraudulent warrant, who lied, he himself knew. This wasn't even a matter of, well, I can't be sure about any of this. He admits, yeah, I knew that the postal inspectors had told Mattingly had been told the postal inspectors said there was nothing suspicious going on. Yeah, but we're going to go through with it anyway. So Joshua James admits to his perjury. He admits to it. This is not a bombshell. It is a barrage of bombshells. The entire reason that Breonna Taylor was murdered, the entire reason for this whole needless racist tragedy was because Joshua James and his cronies lied. They filed a fraudulent, perjury-filled affidavit lying about packages being sent to Breonna Taylor's apartment. They lied. Breonna Taylor died for a lie. This tragedy only occurred because the Louisville PD lied. And they did it knowingly. It was a deliberate, malicious, thought-out, intentional lie. And yet, you don't see the white media having that as the lead. That's what the lead should be. Every headline, coast to coast, should say, the Louisville police lied and Breonna Taylor died as a result. That should be the headline. Louisville police lied in their search to get a search warrant and an innocent woman died as a result. That should be the headline, coast to coast. But it's not, because the white media understands they're not merely trying to protect the thugs with badges in the Louisville PD who can't even get the post office to cooperate with them. They're trying to protect the enforcement arm of white supremacy. Because of the fact that this thing is blown up, especially at the time that it's blown up, and because it's become this big thing, the grand jurors are in revolt. This is going to be setting a terrible precedent for the injustice system nationwide, because the problem is white supremacy relies on the ability to carry out violence with impunity. It also relies on its administrators, like the prosecutors and judges, being able to carry out illegal maneuverings, such as these grand juries, where they deliberately give either wrong, incorrect information to the juries, or just lie to them altogether, if not withhold information from the juries. And then they give the juries all sorts of either misleading, at best misleading instructions, or just lie to them altogether. And the white media understands this is what holds the administrative arm of white supremacy together. This is how it operates. You can't have people saying, well, now you can't operate like that anymore. White supremacy is based on lies, just like the search warrant for Breonna Taylor's apartment. White supremacy is based on lies. It relies on lies. It cannot afford to tell the truth. And here the black media is agitating and making the white media have to actually report this stuff. You better believe there were probably some angry phone calls to the Washington Post saying, what the hell are you doing? What do you guys think you're doing? Why, if this is in the Washington Post, don't you know that other outlets are going to be seeing this? What the hell's wrong with you guys? What's wrong is the black media called them out. That's what's wrong here. Which means nothing is wrong at all. Absolutely nothing. The headlines about this, if you're going to write about Breonna Taylor at this point, you make sure you point out and start off with Joshua James knowingly, deliberately lied to get the search warrant for Breonna Taylor's apartment. Without that search warrant, there would have been no raid. No raid means no murder of Breonna Taylor. So everything comes back to that search warrant. If the search warrant was valid and based on truth, then what that means is, well, at the very least, it was legal. The raid was, not the murder. That murder would never have been legal under any circumstances. Hell, even the Louisville SWAT team said that thing was messed up. It was egregious. Even they looked and said, we would never have done that. Though I'm sure there's a big question mark over that one. But even the SWAT team couldn't back them up on it. So the search warrant was fraudulent. It was obtained through perjury. And without that, you would have had no raid. Why the world is it then that it's okay for the white media not to talk about that? There should be lawsuits flying left, right, and center. Joshua James ought to be in jail tonight, but you notice that the Judge Mary Shaw, she's already gone silent on this one, saying, well, I'm going to leave it up to the Justice Department. The Justice Department doesn't preside over her courtroom, but she's already looking and going, well, we know Bill Barr's not going to do anything, so I'm going to hide behind him, and I'm going to do the same thing Daniel Cameron did. I'm going to find someone to hide behind. I'm going to say, well, I would like to have filed some sort of perjury charge against him. I would love to have held him in contempt, but you see, if the feds didn't do anything, the feds don't have a damn thing to do with Kentucky law. No, these are the administrators of white supremacy circling the wagons. You've already seen how earlier this week, the murderer of George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, that bastard, he's made bail, which we pretty much knew he would. He should be held without bail. As soon as I heard that he was going to be held without bail, I'm like, okay, the white supremacists are going to pass the plate around for him. And you're going to have some of these rich white supremacists like the William Regnerys and the Robert Mercers. They're going to put some money in there and the cops are going to pass it around because this is about making a point to black people. That, okay, you've had us on the defensive, you've slapped us around and kicked us around. Well, now we're going to try to see if we can turn the tide and push back. Yeah, it's going to be egregious, it's going to be wrong, because white supremacy is egregious, reprehensible, and wrong. And that's the point. The point is we're putting our chips on the table. Okay, we're not even going to pretend as if this is not what it is. It's going to be exactly what it is. We're putting our chips on the table. We're going to put our cards on the table, and everyone's going to say exactly what it is. And that's the point. That's what this is about. This is about white supremacy exerting itself openly, just like in apartheid South Africa, just like in America prior to the 1970s. It's going to be bold, it's going to be blatant, it's going to be in your face, it's going to be exactly what it is. As far as white supremacy is concerned, we're past the point of having any pretense. We're past the point of putting forward these phony facades of civility. We're past the point of pretending that this isn't what it clearly is. Okay, we're going to make sure that it's understood. Yeah, this is exactly what it is. We're going to make it very clear that we're going to kill you niggers in the streets. And we're going to make sure you understand, yeah, it's illegal. Yeah, it's unconstitutional. Yeah, we're violating our own law. And that's white supremacist fiat. That's what they're attempting to put in place here. There won't even be a pretense of law. They've always made a phony, flimsy, feeble, pretend, a little bit of judicial theater. They're like, hey, show's over. We're bringing down the curtain on this one. No more judicial theater. It's just going to be white people can kill black people with impunity. End of. That's what they're trying to set the stage for here. That's where this is going. At least that's where they hope that this is going. And the white media is attempting to help them do it. You see, Daniel Cameron and Mary Shaw and Tom Wine and Joshua James and the rest of the morons and racists and bootlicks in Louisville, they're not the only ones who are quaking in their boots and peeing their pants right now at the prospect of the truth coming out. They're not the only ones who want to shut up the grand jurors. They're not the only ones who are terrified of people starting to ask questions about that search warrant. They understand exactly where this goes. That search warrant is not merely the central pillar of this murder, it's the whole case itself. If you are dumb enough to believe that that search warrant was valid, as Daniel Cameron's representatives falsely and fraudulently and illegally claimed in front of the grand jury, if you believe there was anything valid about it, well, then you might have a leg to stand on, at least as far as the raid itself went. You have no justification for the murder of Breonna Taylor. But at least you can try to give yourself some wiggle room and say, well, it was just a tragic confluence of events. But if that search warrant was obtained based on perjury, then that means that everything that happened afterwards was illegal. Hell, she could have had tons of cocaine piled up to the ceiling. She could have had more cash in there than the U.S. Mint. You couldn't have used any of it because the search warrant was illegal and obtained through perjury. It was based on a lie. Fruit of the poison tree. Which means that you can't use it. But that's not what this is about. This was as soon as they understood, whoops, one of our illegal raids, because they've been doing this for the longest time. Breonna Taylor was not the first or the only one. They've been doing this for the longest time, but it never blew up in their faces. Not enough people made a stink about it. Now people were, and that's the problem. So they've been doing these illegal raids for the longest time. This time it blew up in their faces, and they weren't able to make it go away. The white media couldn't bury this one for them. So now they're looking and going, we need to manufacture some counter headlines. Just say it was Kenneth Walker. And these, by the way, this is the white media here. The white media reporters and the white media producers, the white media editors, they were the ones saying, we need some counter headlines here. We need to find a way to say it was Breonna Taylor's fault. Well, if Breonna Taylor had not ever had any sort of conversation with Jamarcus, we know that those two had been estranged from each other for years and years. We know these people haven't had any dealings of any sort, not even a conversation in years. But you know what? The fact that she ever did, that was the problem. And that's really on her when you think about it. That's the white media's job. The black person is always to be blamed. Every headline should be about the illegal maneuverings of the Louisville PD and Daniel Cameron. It should be about the fact that Daniel Cameron lied through his office. He lied in court, claiming that the search warrant was valid. And then when he got called out about it, he said, well, we really haven't researched the circumstances regarding how the affidavit was obtained. Well, those two statements cannot be true. The search warrant cannot be valid, and you say, well, we haven't actually checked to find out whether or not it was valid. We never actually vetted the search warrant. Then why did you have your representative tell the grand jury in court that the search warrant was valid? You see, this is what the black media does. And it's what the white media is desperate for you not to do. The problem here happens to be that if people start saying no more grand juries, people start saying that the police are going to be held accountable for everything they do, and the judges will be held accountable for the search warrants that they sign off on. Well, in that case, then you have eliminated the necessary immunity from law that white supremacy requires. You're making it where they're going to be punished for carrying out white supremacy. And the white media is also going to be punished as well. Because the same way that the white media lies to protect the U.S.'s illegal wars overseas and also here in the United States, they also lie to protect the domestic branch of the enforcement arm of white supremacy, i.e. the police, the thugs with badges. The white media understands what's at stake here. That's the reason why they got to go to the mat and they got to tell every lie. And it's like, no, you're not going to make us actually report the truth. You're not going to make us criminalize the police for carrying out white supremacy. You're not going to make us testify against the police. You're not going to do that. Because it's not some racist cops who the white media is trying to protect. It is the system of white violence that is absolutely required in order to maintain white supremacy. Thugs with badges or just private citizens with delusions of supremacy, they require the public to view them with legitimacy. The police absolutely require the public to defer to them, but people do not defer to someone or something that they see as illegitimate. And as I pointed out to you before, the U.S. Army's definition of legitimacy is the authority conferred by one group onto another. In this case, the authority is being conferred by the public onto the police. But what goes unsaid is, if one group decides that they no longer are conferring authority on the other, you're going to have open conflict. You see, if the public decides we're no longer going to be conferring authority onto the police, then the police have no authority. The police's authority does not come from any mayor or any police chief or any city council or any state legislature. Because when the police are out in the streets, the only reason that anybody decides that they're going to do anything the police say is because the public is more or less going along with this fiction that the police are some sort of neutral, objective third party who is merely enforcing the law, that they are not a group of white supremacist gangsters, a bunch of white supremacist thugs with badges. But what we're telling people is that's exactly what they are and what they've always been. The police came out of the old slave catchers, and they have never stopped in that particular pursuit. And if the police are nothing more than a white supremacist gang, what that means is the public does not have to do anything that they say. They have no legitimacy. No legitimacy means nobody's going to defer to them on anything. Well, the public vastly outnumbers the thugs with badges, so what that means is the cops will understand, whoops, no more trying to lock black people up, because people are basically sitting on their hands waiting to see if the police knock off this racist nonsense. The public has the ability to stop this white supremacist violence under color of law anytime that they want. The public can stop it. The public does not have to sit here and just be the hapless victims of these thugs with badges. The public has the ability and the right to defend themselves and to institute law and order. I say institute because you cannot restore law and order to the United States. The United States has never had law nor order. The only thing the United States has ever had is white supremacist fiat and white supremacist control. The white supremacists say one thing on Monday, something else on Tuesday. You see that with Daniel Cameron. On Monday, Danny Boy was talking about how, why, I have no objection to the jurors, to the grand jurors speaking out, till he realized, whoops, there's a few more grand jurors who popped their heads up and said, you know what? We want to speak up too. Now, ever since yesterday, you got Daniel Cameron saying, on second thought, I've changed my mind. They shouldn't be saying a word. Yeah, it's one thing on Monday and something else on Tuesday. That's how white supremacy must have it. Now, nobody is going to submit to or follow any sort of system that literally changes its mind day by day. That's schizophrenia. That's chaos. How do you get people to go along with that? Or at the very least, even if you don't want to go along with it, how do you make it where they don't challenge it? You require a dedicated, organized group of thugs, organized violence, for the sake of forcing compliance, to force obedience, or at the very least to make it where people are forced to not fight back or otherwise try to overthrow such a system. Now, in order for that to work, on some level, you have to make the people think that these thugs with badges are, on to some degree or another, legitimate. That's where the white media comes in. The orgy of cop shows and cop movies and the police walk on water and, well, if the police kill someone, we're going to put the victim on trial. That's the white media's job. Because there's a whole lot of folks in the society who understand that behind every illegal and unconstitutional law, behind every illegal and unconstitutional court ruling, behind every illegal maneuver in the society, whether it be redlining or whether it be white real estate developers or just white private citizens going, we'll go where we want and do what we want. Why is it then that the oppressed do not say, you know what, that crap ain't going to go. There's going to be punishment for anyone who tries to oppress or harm us. The reason why is behind all of those illegal and racist and anti-black maneuvers is the credible threat of violence. Why is it that anyone would allow some white supremacist real estate developer to say, I'm going to take your land and you'll be lucky if I even pay you for it? Why would anyone allow a George Zimmerman to get away with murder? It's because you understand that if you try to produce justice, well, there's going to be some guys with guns who show up. And the government has given them military-grade equipment, just in case what they carry around in their squad car ain't enough. That's okay. The U.S. government's given them military-grade equipment. That way, you are forced to allow this completely unjust state of white supremacist chaos to continue. It is to force you not to do anything about it. You will allow white supremacy to carry out its violence and murder and theft on pain of death. If you try to resist, if you try to fight back, you'll be killed. That's the reason why the police make it a point that when dealing with black people, they make sure to shoot the black person dead. It's to make the point, you're not going to be going to trial, buddy. Ain't going to be any trial for you. Well, as black folks, we got to lose our fear of that mess. As black people, we cannot allow the white supremacists to literally have us scared to death. You are never going to have your freedom if you make it very clear that all someone has to do is threaten your life and you'll get in line. You'll let them do anything they want as long as they threaten your life. You got to make it very clear that you value certain things such as your power and your freedom and the safety and security of your children. You value that more than your life. Will you make it very clear that nobody's going to have you scared to the point where you'll sit on your hands and let white supremacy reign? That as far as you're concerned, your ability to be able to live in safety and to live in comfort and to know that your children do not have to fear white supremacy, that's more important to you than whether or not you see tomorrow. When you have people who make that very clear, hey, Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. He's celebrated. You let a black person say, hey, give me freedom or give me death. Oh, that's terrorism, that's inciting violence, No, it's making people very aware that I am going to defend myself to whatever level is required to ensure my safety and those of my circle. White supremacy spent a lot of time and poured a lot of concrete into the phony foundation of the police as an institution, being somehow basically honorable. No matter how many examples that get cited daily of police misconduct, malfeasance, brutality, and racism and murder, just a mountain of evidence piled up against them, the white media always makes sure, well, you can't say all of them. Okay, fine then. 90% of them. There, I didn't say all of them. Happy now? But the white media is always doing that. As an institution, the thugs with badges must be maintained at all costs. Because those white publishers and those white editors and those white writers at those white media institutions, they know damn well that they would not have their position. They wouldn't have the houses that they live in. They wouldn't have their salary if it wasn't for the fact that you have white supremacy that has decided these guys are going to have these positions, and these positions are going to be guaranteed to them. And the only way that you can maintain any sort of guarantee in any society is you got to have the ability by force of arms to make it where everybody understands there are certain groups who are going to be guaranteed certain things, and don't you go thinking that you're going to horn in on their action. Don't you go thinking you're going to challenge that. If white supremacy does not have violence to guarantee this stuff, then there will be no guarantees. Now, you and I call that democracy. And democracy, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke pointed out, white supremacy could not last for a single day if there was actually democracy. And so what you have is you don't have a free press. What you have is racial propaganda. You do not have a government. All you have are the administrators for white supremacy's various processes. That's all you got. They carry out white supremacy's various administrative processes. Your courts are not courts at all. As you've seen, the decisions have been made before there's even a trial. Daniel Cameron showed you that one. Oh, there's not going to be an indictment. I'm going to make sure that I'm not even going to let there be. I'm not charging them with anything. And I'm going to go ahead and try to hide behind the grand jury because I know the public would want to skin me alive if I were to say it myself. So I'm going to lie and say the grand jury. But I'm going to make sure that they're told, nope, no, indictment's not on the table. And don't go letting yourself get fooled by any of these left-wing white supremacists. You see, these white liberals, they will occasionally acknowledge their privilege and then act as if they're doing great things for you. But you see, that's only because acknowledging privilege doesn't actually change it. Just because you say, oh yes, I do acknowledge my privilege. Well, hell, that's like saying grass is green and the sky is blue. It means nothing. Of course you got privilege. We've been talking about that for 500 years. You think just because you acknowledge it means something? Hell, Thomas Jefferson acknowledged it. Abraham Lincoln acknowledged it. I do not believe in the equality of the races. I would see the superior position assigned to the white man. Richard Spencer admitted to it. White people saying that they got privilege means nothing because everyone says that. The question is, what the hell is going to be done to change that? You see, acknowledging white privilege means nothing. Dismantling this white thugocracy, that means everything. So that's why your white media is going all in for the thugs with badges. They have a symbiotic relationship. The white media, your white writers and your white editors and white publishers and white news directors and white producers and white station owners, they understand full well that the exact same system of white supremacy that supports and sustains the thugs with badges and provides them with every crumb of their daily bread, that is the exact same system that these white supremacist news organizations, these white supremacist news writers and producers and all the rest of them, they depend on that exact same system too. They are all reliant on it. And when you start saying we're going to start eliminating the police as an institution, well, who's going to tell you that it's okay for these publishers and such to have these big tax breaks that you can't have? Who's going to tell you that they get to have the choice pieces of land and, well, you have all these rules and such that you have to abide by that makes it where you got a system that's set up from the start that you get nothing while they get everything? Why should you abide by that? Why should you allow that? Why should you tolerate that? Well, because they made sure that there won't be any schools because they're closing down the schools. There won't be any hospitals, certainly not any good ones. There's not going to be any roads repaired. Oh, but we will make sure that the military and the police absolutely have state-of-the-art weaponry. Joe Biden's not proposing any legislation to punish the police, though he did make a solid promise. You make him president and he's going to give the thugs with badges $300 million. Yeah, because we got to make sure that the same people who make sure that Joe Biden is never held accountable for his racism, the same people who refused to actually arrest his son Hunter for all the drugs that he was taking and to arrest Joe Biden's daughter for all the marijuana and drugs that she used. You see, Joe Biden relies on that too. They are all reliant on a system of white legal immunity. The system cannot work and cannot operate any other way. Well, the black media is not going to allow that. We ain't having it. We understand exactly what the murder of Breonna Taylor represents. We understand the threat that it represents to white supremacy and why they are terrified of the fact that things have gotten to this stage. They're looking and going, wait a minute. We need the people to comply with what we tell them. When Daniel Cameron says, you guys can't talk about this case. You can't tell anybody that I refuse to put indictment on the table. You can't say that. You can't tell anyone what happened here. Yeah, we know what you guys looking and going, this is screwed up. This is not at all what we thought was going to happen. Yeah, well, you can't tell anybody about it. You can't say anything about it. And then he goes in front of the cameras and says, the grand jury rendered their ruling. And you know what? I agree with it. And well, you can't blame me. It was the grand jury and it was a jury of 12 people. And what are you going to say that I had them on strings? You can't prove anything. Now, the point now, we're going to tell you exactly how he gamed the system, how he manipulated the system and how he set it up. This was a phony process from the beginning. It was a kangaroo court set up for nothing more than to make sure that there would be no charges, but to do it in a way where Daniel Cameron wouldn't have to take responsibility for it so he could save his political ass. And now he's getting held accountable for it. Or at the very least, he's been pointed out he can't run from it. But family, we got to keep the pressure on. Because the white media, they can be made to toe the line, but they're not going to do it willingly. We have to let the bastards know that we're watching them. We see what they're doing. So whenever you see myself or someone else posting some garbage that the white media's put up, especially if it's on Twitter, you guys should make sure to go by those Twitter feeds, not cursing anyone or throwing any insults or anything, because that's the kind of stuff the white media will point to and say, these niggers, they were so, look what they, just a bunch of trolls. But these reporters for these white media organizations, they've always relied on the idea that nobody ever points to them and says, here's where your story's wrong. Here's what the facts are. You need to change this story. That's why I posted to those Washington Post reporters on Twitter. Gave them some links to the very WDRB and the Courier Journal stories that now here they are, a day late and a dollar short. Now here they are reporting on it after the black media did it weeks ago. The very stuff that we've been telling y'all about for weeks, the Washington Post pulls up the rear. As I've always told you, if you've been getting your news and information from the white media, well, you too are among the last to know. But family, whenever this stuff happens, you make sure that you lend your voice to the cause and let them know that it ain't just one or two people who are putting them on notice that we see what they're doing. There's a number of people who do. Because the same way Daniel Cameron wants to do his dirt from behind a wall of anonymity and concealment, you got these white supposed left-wing reporters and such. They think they're doing the same thing. These guys are all of them operating out of the same playbook, running the exact same plays. Until someone shows them, you're not getting away with anything. We see what you're doing. You're getting called out on it. Putting pressure on the administrative, enforcement, and propaganda arms of white supremacy, that is not the responsibility of just any one particular black person in the black media, no matter how widespread their reach may seem to be. It is the responsibility of us all. I think this is a good time to remind you guys, you are the force multiplier, not me. I'm only one person. You guys are the ones who put the muscle behind the message. When you guys mobilize, things happen when you do. But the opposite is also true. When you sit back just telling yourself somebody else is going to pull your load, then you wonder why it is that nothing happens. You wonder why it is that the white supremacists become emboldened. You want to know why? Because you didn't move. When we fight, we win. I've been saying that ever since RIP Black America, and it's more true now than it's ever been. Our victory over white supremacy is going to come down entirely to how much effort you put behind it. When you guys move, when you guys go on the warpath, the white supremacists scatter. Heck, if you look at what happened just with the Washington Post in the last few days, that was practically nothing. Practically no effort whatsoever. And this happens to be the paper of record inside the Beltway. But by them finally coming up with the confession, what they're doing is they're admitting that they're giving a confession. Yeah, we've been sitting on the truth. We figured we were getting away with it. Damn, you came to us and confronted us directly on it. We're not supposed to just sit back and let the white supremacists tell these lies with impunity. We're supposed to call them out on it, because the lies that they're telling are meant to lay the groundwork for wiping us out. And no black person worth their melanin should ever be content to sit on their hands or sit around waiting for somebody else to do the heavy lifting while that's going on. I call us the B1 Brigade for a reason. Because when we go on the march, the bad guys fall back. And that includes the white media. Because at the end of the day, the white media also requires legitimacy too. And that's something that only the public can give to these guys. But you got to make it very clear to them, hey, you're illegitimate unless you report this truth. This is not about trying to rehabilitate the Washington Post. That place is a freaking toilet, just like the rest of the legacy white media. But what this is about is warfare. The white media is supposed to be a propaganda organ for the thugs with badges, part of their communications apparatus. And one of the first things you're supposed to do in war is to disrupt the enemy's lines of communication. I mean, if you take a look at the comment sections of the previous stories that the Washington Post did about Breonna Taylor, and then take a look at the one that they wrote yesterday when they were forced to actually have to tell the truth because of the pressure that was put on them based on my tweets on Twitter, you see that it's a totally different thing, like night and day. Yeah, see, the white media understands that the tone and tenor, their choice of words, what they put emphasis on, that helps to shape public opinion. If they put a certain slant on it, why, you'll have everyone getting the message that, yeah, Breonna Taylor, this nigger, you know how those people are, and this was all her fault, you know. On the other hand, you make sure that they're forced to tell the truth, and people, it seemed like every comment was saying, man, the police lied, they committed perjury, the police lied, man, why are these guys not in jail? The white media knows that. The white media looks at themselves and they're going, man, we were helpless to stop this whole defund the police movement. And now you're making us basically just dump more and more evidence on how the police are so corrupt. Oh my God, you're making it where we're bringing down the very system that we depend on. Well, it's a system that never should have existed in the first place. It's not my fault that the white media is on the wrong side of history. Not my fault that the white media chose to be on the wrong side of the blue wall.